Hi guys, my name's Don and I am your Overlanding angler. On this first video of this channel, I want to talk about a few things. First off, the 5th-gen Toyota 4Runner. I bought a 5th-gen Toyota 4Runner about 2.5 years ago. I wasn't in the market for a vehicle at the time, but through some mechanical setbacks, it came time for me to buy a new vehicle. So I developed a formula to kind of go over preventing buyer's remorse. You buy a vehicle, you realize you don't like it, you buy another one, you go into more debt. So we sat down, me and my wife, and came up with a new plan. So preventing buyer's remorse is a big deal. Because if you buy a vehicle, you don't like it, a year later you trade it in, you get into more debt, and it can really hurt you. So you need to figure out how much you're willing to spend on the vehicle total and how much you're willing to spend a month. Once you get those numbers down, set everything aside. The next thing you need to do is you need to get out like a chalkboard or a piece of paper and you write down 2 questions. The first of those is, what do I need in a vehicle? And for this to work, you have to be completely objective. You can't go into this with any preconceived notions. I was going from a full-size truck, so the first thing I asked myself was, do I want another truck? Well, I looked at my life at the time. I had a 1-year-old little girl. I didn't really haul a lot of things. I didn't tow very often. So I really didn't need a truck. Going kind of the other direction, it would have been nice to be able to put my kid's stuff in the back of a car that's covered and protected by the elements. So with that, a truck was kind of out of the picture. I was able to eliminate that from my selections. The other things I needed is, being a paramedic in a large metropolitan EMS system, I have to go to work. Whether we have rain, snow, sleet, ice, tornadoes, Taylor Swift concerts, fire and brimstone, I still have to go to work. So I needed something that was either all-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive. Kind of going back to having a kid, any parent knows that the smaller the kid, the more stuff you got to take with you. So I knew a sedan was probably out of the question. So now I had narrowed my search down to an all-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive SUV or crossover. Then you can transition over to, what do I want in a vehicle? And what I wanted was something that encompassed my first car when I was 16 years old. When I was a 16-year-old kid, I was an awkward introvert who'd sit in his room and build models and play Xbox. The thought of asking my parents, hey, can I borrow the car to go hang out with my friends and then have to run errands and put gas in the car was just overwhelming. But when I first got the keys to a 1977 Chevy Nova, that changed everything. Now, this car really belonged in a junkyard, and I'm not totally unconvinced that it wasn't at one point. But once I got it, I had this machine that would take me anywhere. Every time I got in the driver's seat, I felt like I was going on an adventure. And I wanted that. I wanted a car with personality. I wanted a vehicle that would get me where I needed to go, and I wanted to feel that adventure every time I got behind the wheel. I wanted something with personality, and really, before I knew what overlanding was, I really wanted to be an overlander. So I did a lot of research. I looked into 3 possible options, and the first one was the Jeep Wrangler JL. They had just come out with it. I went up to the dealership and I test drove one. And as a 6-foot-tall, 270-pound guy getting in the driver's seat of that Jeep Wrangler, I was a little cramped. It was small on the inside. I really didn't like just how small it was. It had a ton of personality. It was incredibly capable off-road. All of that, combined with that high $55,000 price tag, was something that put it kind of in perspective. The second vehicle we looked at was the Subaru Forester Sport. My wife had a Subaru Forester and I really enjoyed driving that. I went and looked at it, but one of the things I didn't like is getting in it, it really didn't have a personality. The car felt like it was on rails. I felt like at any point, all of a sudden on the infotainment system, something would pop up and saying, you know what, you're not driving right. You just sit back, play Angry Birds, and I'll get you where you need to go. It felt like it was on rails, and I didn't like that. I wanted a driver's car. I wanted a car that needed me just as much as I needed it. It also is limited by the all-wheel drive capabilities. Yeah, there's some selectors where you can change to dirt and sand or mud or snow. It's got X mode, which simulates a low-range gearbox, but you are kind of limited by that. The third vehicle we looked at was the Toyota 4Runner. And I was so confident with the research that I'd done that I walked into this Toyota dealership and walked up to the first salesman I saw and said, I want to buy a TRD Pro in Voodoo Blue right now. I knew that's what I was gonna buy. And the salesman kind of looked at me and he said, well, what are you gonna do with it? I thought that was a stupid question, and I just looked at him and I said, I'm going to drive it. And he kind of smiled and he said, no. Are you going to put a roof rack on it? Are you going to put tents? Are you going to lift it? Are you going to put bumpers with a winch? Are you going to put all of these modifications on it and take it overlanding? And I said, yeah. And he goes, then don't buy the TRD Off-Road Pro. Don't buy the TRD Pro. I kind of looked at him silly, and he goes, you need to buy the TRD Off-Road. You can get the premium model still for $5,000 less than a TRD Pro, and it has all the goodies with it. If you lift the TRD Pro, you're going to throw the suspension away anyway. The more weight you add to it, it compromises the suspension that's already on it because it's set up for the vehicle as it sits. So I went and I drove it, and guys, I really loved this vehicle just from sitting in it for the first time. The first thing that I saw was the thing still had a digital clock right up in the control panel, and I thought that was just quirky. The rear window rolled down. It had personality, and I needed to drive it. I drove it, and I ended up buying it that day, drove it home. I've owned that thing for just shy of 2.5 years. I've taken it down some muddy roads. I've taken it kind of up on some small rocks, but I've reached the limitations of where it is stock, and it's time to make a change. So that's why we're here today at Custom Off-Road Equipment here in Oklahoma City. These guys know what they're talking about. They're doing a great deal, and they are installing for me an Ironman 4x4 suspension kit. So let's get to look at it. All right, guys, these are going to be some of the modifications we're going to put on the 4Runner. All of this stuff is from Ironman 4x4. It comes in their build kit. We've got our pre-built coilovers. These go up front, shocks and springs for the rear. These new upper control arms, a new skid plate, and some recovery points that are going to mount to the skid plate. It also has a roof rack and a bunch of lights that come with it, but we don't have those right now. So let's see what it looks like afterwards.